Okay. So, is there a you here, separate from the totality of experience, the totality of whatever this is? Can it be found? Can it be experientially confirmed as something real? A real individual, separate self, a real me here, separate from the sensed world, a finite, limited entity. Have we ever actually experienced that? Or has it merely been assumed this whole time? When we investigate our direct experience, can we confirm that assumption to ourselves? Really? Experientially? In a way that's concrete and tangible? In a way that proves beyond any doubt that that's the way it is? When this realization that I talk about constantly dawns, let's say, it's revealed to be obviously the way it always has been. It's more of a remembering than a discovery, a remembering of the way it always has been, and a deep and certain obviousness to that that's undoubtable, that's real in a way that doesn't need to be confirmed by theory or concept, because it's self-evident, self-confirming, self-obvious. So the first step might be, for most, is there a thinker in here separate from the thoughts? Is there a me thinking separate from the thought experience? We might investigate that by looking into what feels like me here, immediately, now, because it's certain that I am here. It's certain that there's something that feels like me. So then we ask, what is that me? Who am I? That asks this question, that thinks these thoughts, trying to figure out who and what I am. We can maybe come to a certain point where it becomes clear that the answer can't be ascertained with thought, that we're looking for something that is prior to the appearance of thought, that feels like me. And there might be a noticing that in the absence of thought, I'm still here. During the experience of thought, the thoughts that come and go and change frequently in form, I'm still here. We can't remember a time where, or we can't say we've had the experience ever that I'm not here. So what is it that is certain, that feels like me, that is certainly here? It could become obvious that there isn't a conclusion to that experientially there isn't a definitive statement that can be made in thoughts. It's going to satisfyingly confirm that. It may become clear that the thoughts are transient, ever changing, that come and go. What I am, what feels like me that's here, isn't touched by that. So the experiential exploration leads us to a place prior to thought, an awareness, a consciousness that is clear and becomes more clear in the absence of thought, in the absence of the objective thought narrative. The assumption here being that I am the thinker, experiencing my thoughts. And when we look for that, we don't find the thinker. We don't find anything other than thought. So where is the thinker? When we look for the thinker, all we find is thought. All there is thought. Thoughts appear, that can be said with certainty. There is a thinking experience, but whenever we turn the attention round to the one that feels like me that's thinking, the thinker, it simply isn't there. So that fundamental identity, that fundamental experience, that sense of awake aliveness isn't contingent on the coming and going of thought. The identity is more primary, more prior than the experience of thought. That present aliveness, present awareness, is what feels like you. Prior to the explanations or descriptions about who or what I am, so there's an assumption of a thinker and a thought experience, a one who owns the thought experience or is subject to the thought experience. But when we look, all there is thought. So you could say what I am can't be found separate from the thought. No separation. Only thought. What that thought is made of, I guess you could say, is awareness, consciousness. But is that really relevant? Does that experientially need to be described or specified? So then we can move to the sound. Where an experience is the hearer, the one listening, the one hearing the sound separate from it, the one perceiving the world of sound separate from it, in it, moving through it. So when we don't construct a narrative about that, construct a thought-based conclusion about that, can the hearer be found? Can the one hearing the sound actually be found in experience? What can be found in experience? Just the sound. Can it be truthfully said that I experience, in direct experience, I directly experience the hearer, myself as the one hearing, separate from the sound? If you really listen. if we're stringent, is that the right word? I'm not sure. If we're honest about it, what is the only thing that can be said about the experience of sound? What is the most real thing about the experience of sound? You could say the only real thing is the sound itself. So it may appear like there's an empty space in which the sound is appearing. Spatial map of what the sound looks like in dimensions, but is that information contained within the sound? Is the sound changing itself to look like that, or is that a mental projection? Is it clear where the sound is and where I am? Is that crystal clear? Is that real? Or is there just sound? It's very warm in this car. So then it gets even weirder. We could ask, in the seeing, where is the one seeing? Where is the seer? Can it be found? When we look for the one seeing, do we find anything that's not thought construction, an assumption, a model, creation of mind, of thought, in the visual sense? Is there anything other than what's seen? Is there anything other than the visual appearance ever in direct experience? This could just become obvious really easily, but it has to be experiential. It can't be a thought conclusion. Noticing of what is actually here and what is not. Seeing clearly, let's say, or experiencing the clarity of what is here, the seen, and what is not here, simply not here, the one who's seeing. It sounds really obvious. Like, in the visual sense, is there anything other than what's seen? It sounds really obvious, but is it? Is it being complicated with thought structures? Is there a narrative trying to explain and rationalize this? Or is it experientially clear? I could say, for myself, I could say that when this became experientially clear, it also became that experientially clear that you could say, limits of language, that anything sensed in the visual field of experience, anything appearing as what's seen, became much more obviously what I am than the thought that says I am a separate thing looking at this. Again, it's such a hard thing to describe because it's not like your identity suddenly expands out with this body into everything. It's not really like that. It's a noticing of the way it is anyway. The noticing, let's say a noticing of the absence of the assumption being the separate one looking. I say a noticing of the absence, but again, limits of language, it's not quite like that. What's here becomes clear, what's here becomes obvious. And what's obvious about it is there is no limit to it, there is no separation. There's nothing here separate from the sensed world looking at it. Therefore there's no sensed world. There's no separate character moving through it. There's just what's seen. And what's seen can't come anywhere near to being described in mind and thought. That contrast completely collapses the subject-object assumption, and then essentially you just become lost in the appearance. I mean, you don't even really get lost because you were never there in the first place to get lost. Even in the tactile senses, in the sensation, the physical sensation, even the emotion, the visceral emotion, is there anything other than that sensation? Is there one in here sensing it, separate from it, relating to it? So we'll finish there. It's just a good series of ways to look, ways to inquire into assumptions that just seem to be the way it is until it's not. And when it's not, it becomes obvious that that's the way it is, and that's the only way it is and can be. It's not a discovering something called enlightenment. It's a simple noticing that you are already that, such that the concept of you then dissolves into irrelevancy, if that is even the word. Anyway, that'll do for now. Talk to you next time.